What is your background? How did you get involved in helping to recover people who are being trafficked in the first place?
Without going into too much detail, as a young boy in my preteen, my stepfather was grooming me to be a drug dealer and a person that exploits other humans like he was.
Wow.
I loved him, and at the same time, I hated many of the things he was doing, and they trained me. Not trained me. They were grooming me to be on this pedestal, and they didn't ever assault me, it was almost like they were looking at me as future leadership with them, because they kept lying about me. Anytime there was they would bring in a new dealer that they were, selling drugs to in their network, they'd be like introducing me, and they would say that I'm the quarterback on the football team and stuff. And I'm in sixth grade, right?
So what you're telling me is that you have been involved in the situation where somebody was trying to exploit you, or where human beings were trying to exploit other human beings, whether it was for drugs or other kinds of trafficking, since you were very young.
Yeah. And it wasn't that they were trying, they were. I saw it. I saw them doing it, and they were trying to get me to be that person with them, and they were.
Where did you grow up?
In Southeast Idaho.
Southeast Idaho. Okay.
And I tell you, Chris, it doesn't matter where you're at.
No, that sounds, normally that would be a very calm place, but, or it would seem like a traditionally very rural, safe place to be, but
Yeah.
You're confirming that, no, this stuff happens everywhere.
Yeah. Anywhere there's drug trafficking, name a town where there's no drugs.
Yeah, I think that would be very difficult.
You'll find human trafficking there too.
Wow.
The traffickers know how to hide what they're doing, and I'm going to stay on the spiritual uplifting side, but I do want to help you understand a little bit of where I came from that way. I saw these men doing this illicit work, and I also saw some of their inner workings of trading their children off to each other.
Their own children.
Their own children. But it was unspoken. It's not like, hey, I tell you what, if you arrange this sleepover with this child, then I'll give you this more narcotic or this much more weed based on this. No, it was unspoken. They would just do it. They would give more bags of weed for the amount. They arranged the sleepovers. It was plausible deniability. And they
plausible deniability, just by actually performing the evil works, but not actually talking about it in person amongst themselves.
That's right. And, and so that is where I come about this criminal justice side of it, as I know I know they knew the law, and they were teaching me things about the law at that young age, at how to avoid police officers, and so, and is as if Satan taught them himself, and he probably did. I believe that all this stuff kind of came clear back from Cain, and they're teaching each other. And there are books. They do have manuals that they share with each other and stuff like that. But on the human trafficking side, but my goodness, it's deep, it's evil. And as I was explaining about the successes and failures in the industry, if you're in it for yourself, you're dealing with evil that has been around from the beginning of the world. You will not escape it. You don't belong in here. I don't belong in here. Only this industry doesn't belong. Only God can get you into this and get you back out. And so I'm careful, so careful.
Well, considering your youth, I've got to ask, I mean, that's not real good influences. How did you become committed to the gospel?
Well, my grandmother was an angel, and she was a member, and uh, she had me baptized when I was 8, and
Okay.
I never went to church. Well, I did a couple times growing up, maybe a handful of times I had been to church, and then but I was definitely not somebody interested in continuing to be in church, and my brother was an active member his whole life, and so him and my grandma would try to get me to go to church, and so my brother and I were like this, and we would actually be in fist fights and stuff because he was trying to get me to go to church. So I was hard hearted about, I'm not doing that. Those are, and then so I just to kind of close the gap a little bit before I tell you where that conversion really happened. My coming back to my stepdad. He had this. I have 2 stepdads. My first stepdad was not a good man. Okay, my current stepdad is an amazing man. I love him. He's treated my mom so good. But this first stepdad, who he is deceased now, he was. One day we were at a dealership, it was a junkyard that had some cars there to sell, and this guy would, we would meet at this kind of almost like an underground location, very scenic for the illicit, as you could imagine. And they would come in, and some dealers would come in and test the weed that was there, and and they would take a big hit of a joint or a pipe or something, and one day I was standing on one side of the counter where you enter, and one of the dealers came in to test it. He was standing next to me. My stepdad and his evil friends are on the other side of the counter. And this guy takes a big hit of weed, and then he just falls straight backward and hits his head on the ground. And, we all help him revive him. I'm probably 11 years old here, Chris.
Wow. Okay.
We're driving back home, and my stepdad, he knows every month I'm sorry.
That's all right, man.
I'm looking at the Boy's Life magazine. I wanted to be a Boy Scout. At the back, they would have, like military school and military camp for kids, for youth. You probably know what I'm talking about. I'm sure you read those old magazines and saw all the ads and stuff.
Sure. So what you're telling me, this happened when you were 11 years old.
Yeah, that's what I wanted. I wanted away from all of that. I wanted to be like the good LES kids that have a promising life. And so anyway, we're driving home, and he says, Aros, if you were a good scout, you would have caught him so he didn't hit his head. And looking back with hindsight, I know that the Spirit came to me and told me that is the exact same manipulation that they use on each other and that they use to exploit people. And I felt it and saw it. And I remember looking at him and thinking, I'm 11 years old. And he was in his 20s at that time. And I was just thinking, you might actually believe that. I think he was believing it. And I felt like God was giving me a wise insight
He was trying to use the objective or dream you had of being a Boy Scout to manipulate you.
Yeah.
And you felt like he believed his own lie.
Yeah. I really do believe that he believed that. And I just instantly knew, I am not one of you. And I will never be. And then I kind of started thinking differently than them and trying to avoid. I still wanted to impress my stepdad, right? I wanted to, that validation. And so I still was a good son, trying to help him and do things, to impress my father, but my stepdad. And then it wasn't until I was, I think, probably about 14, he was trying to get me to do something in that kind of a direction. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. I took a stand, put my foot down, and him and I got into a fight, like an actual physical fight. And he was big enough, and I was a big kid for my age, but I remember he picked me up with my leg, on the ground. It was kind of dropping me, but I was punching and kicking, I was fighting. And I wasn't going to stop, and he knew it. And then he just kind of stopped. And he goes, "You're not one of us." I never had a problem with him again. He knew that I was not to be tried to be pulled.
You were not going to become a commandant drug dealer.
Yep.
Trafficker.
Wasn't going to happen. He knew it at that moment. And then things ended up happening between him and my mom not long after that. And she kicked him out, and, he continued on his path. And then he ended up dying from a rapid case of MS. And I knew, and I saw him again later and right before he passed away. And I knew that God took away that body that he did so much bad with, and
interesting.
And, so I forgive him and I pray for his soul. I believe that, and I do hope in the eternities, he is somebody that I have that relationship with in the future, if it's between him and God, And so
you have a good heart.
I have no harm. No, I wish him no harm that way. But, and I still wasn't really that connected to the church, wasn't really that interested. And then, when I was 17, I was still on kind of a little bit of a rough path in life, but I knew what levels I wasn't going to go on the rough side, right?
Right.
I was in my grandmother's house. I just moved back in with her. I wanted more in life. I wanted goodness, and she let me move in. And I was going through her library, and something about me, I have this insatiable desire for knowledge in my own way, right? And I don't like reading books, but I want to know what's in books. If I see a library, I'll go directly that way. So I'm looking at my grandmother's library, and what I do is I'll grab a book that looks fascinating to me, and I'll skim the first maybe 6 to 10 pages, or read the first 6 to 10 pages, and then read the last 6 to 10 pages, and then I skim through the center. And
I think there are a lot of people who do that.
That's what I do. And I'll sit there and I'll go through the whole book in the library. And I found this book, an old blue book with the gold angel on the front, and I opened it up, and it had my name in it. It was my Book of Mormon from when I got baptized when I was 8 years old, and I just kind of took it and I opened it up, and I felt something that, like these girls, when I asked them, why were you one of them that gets to escape this life when so many of them had? That happened with me, so many times in my life. And I knew that there was some kind of angel or some kind of light. There was a form of light that came over me and rescued me from very bad situations in my past growing up. And when I opened up that Book of Mormon, that same light that same feeling that rescued me multiple times in the past was there.